Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Two Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. Two easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. So excited today. I've got mathematician, author, Dr. Kumar Murty. So welcome, Kumar.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Now I'm so excited to talk with you, and I really want to talk about the book. But before we do that, give me a little background on you. What kind of moved you into mathematics? How did you become involved with that, and at what point did you start writing?
So for mathematics, I think it started when I was quite young.
Yeah.
Like with most of us, I think we start to like what we can do. If you're good at hockey, you start liking hockey.
Right.
So I had a little bit of ability in doing math. So it started with an ability, but then as I grew older, what I recognized in it is it's an extraordinarily beautiful subject.
Yeah.
Extraordinarily beautiful, partly because what it shows us about the human being, things that are not evident, and yet by the force of logic, you make them incontrovertibly true, evident, and so that everybody can see that this is the truth. So there's that beauty in it, the way that something that's totally unexpected, things that you thought would not be connected or connected in some mysterious way. You can't explain why the connection is there, but you can show it's there. So it seemed to me that it starts like with an ability, but then it matures into a realization that it is a highly creative, highly human activity. And that's the way I see mathematics now.
Yeah. I've like growing up, I've always been good with numbers. I'm good with statistics. I'm good with if you throw numbers at me, I'm pretty good with that. Always had kind of a interest there. Where I ran into trouble is when we got into the a little older grades and equations started coming in there, and you started getting letters and different formulas that go into mathematics. That's when I started having difficulty wrapping my head around that. Still good with numbers, like my wife. She's not good with numbers, but she's very analytical, and that's so formulas, that type of mathematics, she's very good at.
The point of these formulas and letters, as you say, is that this is abstraction. You have so let me silence this thing. You start with a concrete. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Mute myself.
Yeah. No, you're good.
No, I can't hear you though.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back. But then occasionally you will get mails or something, I don't know, making noise in the background.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying was that it starts actually exactly like you said, it very explicit. We're actually dealing with numbers. And by the way, notice you said you're comfortable with numbers and you can work with them. But if I stop you and say, what is a number? We will both have difficulty describing it. But that's a very deep idea, concept. Yeah. And yet we're comfortable with not precisely defining it and yet working with it. Now, the where the letters come in is when you realize that you can introduce abstraction into all of the things you were doing with numbers. You can do abstraction. Why? Because things that you did many times repeatedly are all instances of a single operation or a single concept. and I need a way of representing all of those just at once. That's where the letters come in. And then that's where the power of mathematics is, that once you go to the abstract level, when you solve a problem at that level, you solve millions of problems at the concrete level all at once.
Yeah.
And moreover, the process of going from the explicit numbers to the abstract model is such that things that a priori, problems that a priori need not have anything to do with each other, end up being the same abstract equation. And this we find, repeatedly in science, it happens that you formulated something for one purpose and it actually solves not only this problem, but yet many other problems as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of amazing just how connected mathematics is to everything we do. Mm-hmm. It's pretty, it's kind of mind-boggling when you really think about it. Do you still get, like, if you're solving a problem, do you still get that rush when you solve it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I also like doing Sudokus, and I get the rush when I do the Sudoku. I get a rush when I do the math. The point is something that you didn't expect, and then you suddenly see it all fits together. That gives us a kind of aesthetic experience, and yeah, we feel great about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you always written, or is that something that's fairly recent?
No, I think I always had an interest in expressing myself, sharing. There's a saying that, when you find something that's really beautiful, you want to share it. You can't enjoy that kind of emotion by yourself. You have to share it.
I like that.
And so the only way to share it is you have to write, or you speak about it. I enjoy speaking as well. And you want to do this, especially, of course, people in your own circle who have similar interests, but even more so with people who may not have similar interests. Whenever I meet people on this, in different environments, and they ask, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm in math," and the first thing, automatic, guaranteed, the thing they'll say is, "I was never good at math."
Yeah.
That's a common refrain. So it's those kind of people. I would like to connect with those kind of people.
Yeah.
To explain that actually you are good. Firstly, you are good at math at some level. And second thing is, even if you don't want to do the math, you can still appreciate the beauty of math. Much like I don't need to be a musician to enjoy music.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of math teachers and professors both, the difficulty is when you understand something really well, it's not always easy to pass that on to someone else if they don't have an understanding of it. So I had a lot of teachers that were great at teaching students that kind of got it. They already kind of understood it, but they struggled with those like me that just really had a hard time grasping the concept. How do you kind of get around that area? Because I'm sure you've run into a lot of people that struggle.
I actually feel more energized when I come across such people, because it means I can't get into a sort of a rut of I've done it before, I know exactly how to do it. I need to go back to, how did I experience this right at the very beginning? When I first did this, I have to see it from the point of view of the other person who is having difficulty with it, and say, well, there obviously is a way forward, because I and many others have done it. So I need to put myself in that person's frame of mind to see what is the step forward. And I think this is the great thing about being an academic. The greatest thing about being an academic is you are, in a way, you're forever young, because every generation of students has its own difficulties, has its own problems, and you get to see the same thing again from the lens of somebody who's seeing it for the first time. That keeps your mind young, and therefore your whole being young. I actually get stimulated by it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a terrific way to look at that. I really really like that. I always I've got this kind of, it's a fond memory now, but it was difficult at the time. My oldest really struggled with math, all kinds of math. And I was a terrible teacher because I only like some parts of math, especially with numbers, I just know it. I've never really had to learn it. I just knew it. But then, there's other parts that I really struggled with. But I had a hard time changing my method of teaching to fit her method of learning. So she always joked that my different method was just raising my voice. I'm just
Doesn't
yelling
always
at
work
her.
though. This business about the more abstract version. There's a beautiful story of the English philosopher Hobbes.
Yeah.
Hobbes is like famous for political philosophy. His famous book is Leviathan, where he talks about the nature of the state. But there's a connection to mathematics. So one day he visited a friend of his who happened to be a mathematician, and the friend had open on his table Euclid's Elements,
Okay.
books of Euclid.
Yeah.
And the page it was open to was the statement and proof of the Pythagorean theorem. That if you have a right angle triangle with three sides A, B, and C, C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. Hobbes, not a mathematician, but intellectually alive, just looked, what is he reading? He looked at the statement and said, this is impossible. And his friend asked him, what's impossible about it? How can you know? Because this man is making a statement about all right angle triangles. I understand if you give me one with 3, 4, and 5, I can measure that's 5. If you give me 5, 12, then I can measure that's 13. But he's saying it for everything? It's not possible to do that. And his friend, instead of arguing with him, he said, okay, just read the argument. He's a philosopher. He knows what argument means. So he said, read the argument. Okay. So he sat down. He spent the rest of the day reading that one page or so of argument. He finally understood it. And he was just transformed. He didn't realize this was even possible. That the power of logic, that instead of doing this one at a time, at one blow, you did the whole thing. And that, again, comes back to what we were discussing before about abstraction.
Yeah.
You see, what is Leviathan? Leviathan is a giant.
That's right.
And Hobbes' idea is that the state is like a big individual. See, I have rights, you have rights, but the state also has rights. It is this whole business about treating the state as like a big individual. He got that idea when he got exposed to this little bit of mathematics and saw the power of abstraction. It is an abstraction. You see, to say all of us are individuals, and then I abstract that to the concept of the state. That he got through mathematics, actually.
Well, and we've all had those moments where something clicks, or you have that epiphany, and suddenly everything makes sense, and it just opens up so many doors. It's so many possibilities. And usually you run into something, you're like, well, here I am again. I don't understand this. But you never would have got to that point if you hadn't understood the first part. So it just kind of continually advances.
Actually,
I guess that's kind of how we learn.
That's a really good point, that there's no end to learning. Just because I figured this out doesn't mean now I know everything. There's going to be a next problem. And in a way, we're lucky that that's the case.
Yeah.
Because we'll never run out of things to mystify us and make us.
Do you always see in movies where you have the scientist or the mathematician, and they always have the blackboard in the background that's got some problem that they're just working on in their spare time? Do you have that problem that you're constantly fiddling with?
I have many problems. In fact, there was a very famous young mathematician, a Fields medalist. He visited us a couple of years ago. I asked him to say something to the graduate students, to give them advice on how things go. And he said, look, I always keep 10 problems in my head. And I never allow myself to get stuck. If one problem is I don't know what to do, then I move to another problem. But I always have a bunch of problems in my head. And I keep shifting my attention. As if I feel tired of thinking about one, I shift my attention to another one. And so that way, all of them move forward. And the problems are not of the same difficulty. Some are really hard problems, and some I think, are easier. In his opinion, some are easier, some are harder. So by keeping that variety, he keeps himself, he doesn't allow himself to get tired or frustrated. He always has a way to move forward.
Yeah, I like that. And having a variety, some hard, some not so difficult, would kind of feed you a little bit, because you have a little bit of success maybe with some, and some be a little more difficult, but that would keep you going. Yeah, I
Right.
like that. That's actually, that's good advice for whatever it is you do.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah. This is the interesting thing, that we start thinking in a very specific field, on a very focused area, but then realize we learn things that will teach us about life,
Yeah.
about many things. That's the beauty also. So when people say, "What do you get in mathematics?" I actually see a panorama of life there.
Yeah.
And if as long as you remember those things, then it helps you in all the other things that you have to do.
Well, the thing I think mathematics gets the bad rap for is there's so many people that they just don't try. They just, it's too hard. I don't understand it, so they don't put the effort into it. Where if they really would, I think it does kind of open up some of that beauty you're talking about,
Right. Right.
that they're missing out on. And
Exactly.
even if they're just kind of scratching the surface, what kind of doors does that open up if they just give it a try?
Right, right, right. And also, imagine if I told you literature is very beautiful, like Shakespeare is very beautiful.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, really? Okay, can you tell me? Okay, so then, and suppose I'm stuck at the alphabet.
Okay.
Well, I tell you, look, you have to keep going a little bit past the alphabet, and eventually you'll come to a point where I can show you Shakespeare, and then you'll see how beautiful it is. But if
Sure.
you give up right at the alphabet and say this is ugly, this is not, there's nothing beautiful here, there's nothing. This is for nerds. This is for
Right.
geeks. You'll never get to the point where you can expose yourself to the what people consider the really beautiful and deep, profound
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. I love that. So the book, we got to talk about that. The Science of Human Possibilities. So tell me a little bit about that. What's the book about? Where did the idea come from?
So it's firstly rooted in my experience in classrooms. I've been in front of students for more than 40 years now. And I've seen all kinds of students. I've taught first year calculus, I've taught PhD students, I've interacted with colleagues where we're both trying to figure out a problem, and when we found it, we published a paper on it. So in all of these encounters, what I've understood is that everybody has talent.
Yeah.
There's nobody I can point to in the many, many years that I've been with students. I can't point to anyone who will say this person doesn't have talent. Everybody has talent. The question is, we're all talented at different things, and
Right.
partly that's driven by the fact that we like different things, and we're interested in different things, and that's good. It's by no means would I say that we should all be interested in the same thing. Diversity is what keeps a community, a species, a civilization alive. If we were all the same, we would die, because we would be subject to something will go wrong and we'd all be killed off. The fact that there's diversity, even in terms of thought, physically there is, but even in terms of thought, the fact there's diversity means that as a species, we're going to be continuing to grow as a culture, as a civilization. Humanity will have a very rich future because of the diversity of thought. So, so as I meet people and I see that they all have different talents and different abilities, I realize that we could be a lot more successful and a lot happier if we recognize our own unique talents and abilities and try to develop that, rather than try to develop the talent and abilities of somebody else or somebody who I think has, I ought to be like this or I ought to be like that. Well, maybe not. Maybe you need to figure out, I need to figure out, where is my heart? What is my passion? It need not be what anybody else likes. It's just me. And if I can do that, then I will find not only my life will be quite pleasant, quite engaging, and I will be successful in whatever it is I'm doing. So that's really the key here in the science of human possibilities. Is just realizing that the moment people give themselves the freedom to understand where their heart is, where their passion is, and try to discover that and pursue that. And even if there are difficulties in the short term, but to pursue that because that's where their heart is, that's the best road, best way to get to success for themselves. And in the process, it's not only success for yourself, you actually benefit the world. It's both thought, that my
Yeah.
success actually will make it possible for others to succeed. And so that this is the lesson here behind the science of human possibilities that I'm trying to convey.
I really love that, because that's not an easy thing to do. And we've all experienced it. We've all had that. I'm just out of college. What do I do now? And maybe we didn't even know when we were in college what we were going to do. You get a degree and then you're kind of out there in the world. And the only thing you're really worried about is making a living, getting started. So you don't worry too much about whether you like it or not. Not at first. That's how most of us go. Well, the danger there is that you blink and it's 20 years down the road and you're in a career that you really don't enjoy.
Exactly.
And then, not that you couldn't be doing some good things, but are you really benefiting yourself and others to your full extent if you're doing something that you don't really love?
Right. Exactly. And if there's one thing I can point to in terms of the way technology has changed our world, the way our world has become more closely connected, it means it's given all of us, each of us, the possibility of defining our own path.
Yeah.
This might not have been possible, let's say 100 years ago, where it was a lot harder to get in touch with other people. It's a lot harder to get information. Things were a lot more rigid then, but that's the great opportunity now that we have. Yes, we have new problems that that look like they're overwhelming. There's climate change, there's political tensions, there's technology like AI, which seems to be blurring the what is real and what is unreal, difficult to find out what is the truth. And yet in the midst of all of that, we also have the most opportunity to define our own way through life and make ourselves happy and feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Do you talk a little bit about in the book that there's no real time limit on it? Even if you've never found that thing that you love, you can start looking for it right now. I didn't find podcasting till I was almost 50. And, here I am podcasting and I love it. Best thing I've ever done. And I think a lot of people are like that. You can have a career and do all that stuff. If you're not happy though, do you talk a little bit about that? It doesn't matter what age you're at.
Exactly. And the point here is that when you're following your heart, and by the way, when we will come to this later on, that I mean this in a very practical way. I'm not saying that we're sort of dreamers. When you're following your heart, every step of the way is in a interesting way. It is still pleasant, even when you're faced with setbacks, even when there's problems. It's your problem. I mean, because it's something you want to do, and so when you're following your heart, what happens is everything can be transformed into something that you feel uplifted by, fulfilled by every step of the way, even failures. And imagine if you can live your life in such a way that even a failure raises your mind, spurs you on or inspires you to, I'm going to get myself up and go to the next level. And we see this in the Olympics had just finished. Imagine these athletes, what they go through. The chance that they're going to fail is very high. There's only going to be one person who gets the gold medal. And yet they do it. And it's not as if, I know, of course, there's some heartbreak when they don't get a medal or they don't make their personal best. But nevertheless, they go next day, they're there again, doing it again, training again. Why? Because the point is, the world only sees the medal, but for them, it's something else. It's the journey. That they're doing something that they really want to do. So imagine that if you have a secret recipe by which you can turn everything in life into something positive, everything is an experience that you treasure. Every single pinprick or a big wound is something that you point to and with pride and say, that was me, and I survived, I went through it because I'm doing what I want to do. You must imagine that's like that changes the whole world for us.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So, with your book, what's the first step? If I'm like, I don't know what I want to do or what I'm passionate about, where do I start?
So I think it's okay for first to recognize that I don't need to know the answer at the outset. I don't need to know all the answers at the outset. All I need to know is there is something within me that is trying to express itself, and I want to get there. Okay, give yourself time. The time to grow, to discover yourself. Second thing is understand that there are lots of things ready to help you. The first thing is the book opens up actually with a little bit of neuroscience. Discoveries of neuroscience tell us that our brain is not a static entity; it's a dynamic entity. It rewires itself and changes itself according to what we want, what we make demands of it. So the revolutionary work of people like Wilder Penfield, who realized that the brain has functional areas. This part of the brain does this part of the brain does that. Led to the idea of these brain maps. But then I think more current contemporary point of view is that those brain maps aren't static. So even though this part is doing sight, it's quite possible that this part of the brain is used for sight.
Right.
So that means the maps are dynamic. And what makes the change? What makes the change is what demand do I make on my brain? If I really want something, then that want is what stimulates the rewiring. And so start off with the idea that you are endowed with the equipment, the physical equipment to do whatever it is you want to do. Fine, you don't know exactly what you want to do, but I'm just telling you right now, wherever you end up, when you come to a conclusion, this is what I want to do, you have the equipment. Okay, that's number one. Second thing is you need to pay attention to the way, I need to pay attention to the way I relate to the world and the way I relate to myself. Those two things are connected. With the world, it's good to try to put ourselves in a receptive state, keep our state positive. So the book talks about our attitude, just to understand that, to be a little bit of, be positive, to be a little bit grateful. Why? Because you don't know what's going to come to you from what source. Somebody's going to say something, somebody's going to do something that could be the thing that changes your life. So if we keep our eyes closed, we're going to miss that. So to keep your mind in terms of the world in a receptive state. And second thing is to keep the mind in a receptive state with respect to myself. I need to take the time and trouble to be with myself.
Right.
And listen to myself. There are deeper parts of my being that will talk to me, that will tell me, what the answers to all the questions that I have. Mahatma Gandhi is famous for doing this. When people during the decades that he struggled to bring independence to India, he did many novel things that completely baffled, the British and many other people as well. And for example, there was that famous salt march, where he marched hundreds of miles to make salt. Why? Because the British was taxing the salt, and he wanted to prove, no, I'm free. I can go, I can get the salt, I can make it right under your nose. So that was such a dramatic thing. And people who thought, what's he going to do? Make a little salt? Okay, we'll lose a few dollars of salt tax. Realized actually no, he's just energized. What he's done is planted an idea in people's mind that they can do something.
Right.
So when people saw this, they said, where do you get these ideas from? How do you get these ideas? In fact, when he visited England, Charlie Chaplin met him. And he asked him this question, where do you get your ideas? He said, in silence. Learn to be silent a little bit with yourself. Be with yourself, and your inner voice will speak to you and will give you the guidance that you need. That's why Charlie Chaplin's movies are a little bit deep. They're not just comedies; they're
right.
deep. And he it seems to me, I think he got that. He started that practice. That after meeting Gandhi, he started a practice of one day a week. He'd sort of isolate himself and just be silent. So So these are the two things. Firstly, or three things rather. Firstly, you have very, very sophisticated apparatus to help you do whatever it is you're going to end up deciding
Right.
you want to do. Second thing is, if you keep your mind open in a receptive, grateful way, the way we interact with the world, the way we interact with ourselves, the answers are there. They will come to the surface. And the next point is, don't worry about having all the answers before you start. Take a step forward. It might be a step in the wrong direction. Later on, you may feel it was a step in the wrong direction, but actually nothing is in the wrong direction. This was necessary. I needed to go that way to learn something, and think of it as a process of growth. Every time something happens, I'm learning, I'm growing. And before we realize that, we will actually have honed in on, and it'll come to us like an aha moment and say, I know what I want to do. And by the way, going back to the salt march, that's exactly what happened. Gandhi isolated him. He went back and just sat quietly in his ashram. And then you'll see this, there's a beautiful movie by Richard Attenborough on
Yeah,
Gandhi, and the
that's a
reporter
great
is
movie.
talking to him. Absolutely, a reporter is talking to him, and then suddenly Gandhi's expression changes, and he says, in the beginning of the conversation, the reporter asking, "What are you going to do?" He says, "I don't know." And then suddenly his expression changes. The reporter realizes, "You know what you're going to do, don't you?" It comes to us from within. If we give ourselves the credit of saying, the answers are here, and I'm capable of finding them.
Yeah, all this is, I think so interesting, because I think in the book you talk about an attitude of appreciation, which is kind of what you've been going over. But I think it's really interesting. The brain, it's capable of rewiring itself, even if it's injured. It
Right.
can reroute stuff to
Right.
I've seen I've had people in my family with strokes, different things where
Mhm.
they're not able to speak or to move, and then over time working at it, they get it back.
Yeah.
Because their
Yeah.
brain
Yeah.
is kind of rerouted or rewired and fix that. And that always kind of fascinated me, because we use so little of our
Exactly.
brain.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
knows what it
Yes.
can actually do?
Yes. 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 Exactly. You're right. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I really like that, because it's to me, your book is it's very positive. It's talking about improvements that we can make ourselves. We can do this ourselves and kind of figure out our path. Uh, and that's, I don't know, that's kind of uplifting. It's kind of hopeful.
It is meant to be hopeful, but here's something interesting. It goes that as a consequence of this, namely, not only do we figure out our path and find the thing that gives us most fulfillment, but in that process, we are actually serving the world.
Yeah.
The greatest treasure that we have as in humanity has is our humanity. And so we go looking for, digging the earth, looking for baubles, to think that there's wealth there, but actually all the wealth is here.
Yeah.
And imagine, even if a small percentage of the world population were to understand this and start discovering the wealth within themselves, you can imagine the world is going to be changed. It'll be quite a different place. And so the problems that we have in the world, I think we're looking for the answers in the wrong place. We're trying to sort of fix the outside. It's the outside will only be a reflection of the inside. If our mind is confused, the world is going to be
Right.
confused. And so getting this straight is not just about me, not just about a kind of a selfish thing. It's actually the best way to serve the world is to get ourselves, understand ourselves, and follow our heart and do what we really feel passionate about doing. In the process, many others will be inspired, many others will be uplifted. In fact, I'm working on a project of what I call global prosperity. I'm particularly interested in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There
Okay.
are these
Yeah.
17 goals that the United Nations has listed. On With only six, they started this roughly around 2000, and the idea was in 30 years, that is by 2030, all of these will be done. Well, we're only 6 years away, and unfortunately, we're not there yet, not even close.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, what kind of goals are these? SDG number 1, Sustainable Development Goal number 1, is the end of poverty. So these are big, big, big goals.
Those are big goals.
And they're big goals, and I've been thinking a lot about how is this going to be possible. And it seems to me that it's only going to be possible when we discover there's huge untapped wealth right within us. If you think of, I'm going to end poverty by giving everybody money, that we can't do that. There isn't enough money to do that. That's why these mega projects like the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, they give billions of dollars, and we come back and maybe there's an epsilon improvement, maybe there's no improvement.
Yeah.
But if you think that actually where is the whole issue of poverty going to be solved, it's in here. And so when I figure out that, in fact, I now live in a world where I'm capable of defining my life, working out what I want to be, who I want to be, and in the process enrich myself and enrich those around me, I think that will be how we will get to the end of poverty. And I'm trying to work out the details of that. What does that really mean, even as an economic theory?
No, but I get that. What you're saying is there's so much potential that we don't tap into. It's just missed potential.
Right.
And there's people, of course, there's people out there that do very well and probably are reaching most of the potential that they have, but most of us don't. And
Right.
what are we missing out on? And there's nothing better than finding something that you're good at unexpectedly.
Right.
But how many of us don't even make the attempt? So we don't really know. We haven't found anything we're good at so far, so we just think we're not good at anything.
Right. And here's the interesting thing, Michael, that when we get good at something, people notice not just what we're good at.
Yeah.
They notice a kind of something else in us, a kind of confidence, an ability that a feeling, an attitude that I know I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's contagious. That's contagious.
It really is.
Let's go back. You go back to what we were discussing right at the beginning about what happens in a classroom. I think I often said my main task as a teacher is not to teach you what's in the textbook, and it's not a matter of communicating information. I have only to do two things. Firstly, I need to silence your fear.
Right.
And I need to awaken your love. That's it. Because once those are done, you'll teach yourself. My job will be almost like perfunctory. And it's the same with math. Once I can help you to lose your fear of math, and then once I can awaken in you a desire to know math, that's it. You teach yourself. You'll see it goes really fast. I keep telling people I can teach calculus in an afternoon, because the ideas are really simple. But you won't know the details. But what you'll figure out is this is not a big monster. It's really simple. It is neat. It is. It does do things, and then the rest you do by yourself.
I never got calculus in high school. I really struggled with it. But what I figured out in college was that the problem was me. It was me being closed off and thinking I just couldn't understand it, and that was the issue. When I got to college, I was just like, all right, let's just start from the beginning, and really opened up to it. It wasn't that difficult. I figured it out.
Yeah. So this is what in the book near the end, this thing is discussed about whole concept of who do you think you are?
Yeah.
The sense of identity. If I ask you, who do you think you are? You may list many things. In particular, in that list, you might say, I was never good at math. Well, as long as you hold that, I was never good at math or I can't do math, that's true. You won't be good at math and you can't do math. The moment you say exactly what you just said, namely that in college you got here and say, hold on, listen to this. There must be a way to do this.
Right.
Everything changed. Everything changed because now inside you, your identity changed. You say, I'm a person who can figure this out.
Yeah.
And so what we think of or who we think we are, who do you think you are? It's really an important question. who we think we are will determine the limits of what we're capable of achieving. So the sooner we tell even little children, babies even, you have the potential to be and do anything you want, the more we repeat that and give that idea into the fertile little minds, the more good we are doing for the world. You know,
Yeah,
this
I
whole
love
idea
that
that,
because you know it kind of builds, right?
yeah,
When you open up and you have that first little success, it leads to other successes, and they may not be related to the initial
right,
success, but it opens you up
right.
to where you can repeat that, and it's not as difficult going forward.
Exactly. So you see how the whole field of education, it's a really marvelous field. You have all of these little brains looking at you, and you can imagine you can I think I'm giving you already have a sense of how engaging and interesting an activity it is to put
Yeah.
these ideas into people's minds that they're quite capable of doing whatever it is they want to do.
When you were in the process of writing this book, you mentioned Gandhi. Did you research other philosophers, or how did you kind of flesh the book out?
So a couple of answers to that. But firstly, my favorite philosopher is a 19th century philosopher named Vivekananda.
Okay.
And he lived, as I said, in the 19th century. He was very famous in the late 1890s, early 1900s. He passed away quite young.
Yeah.
But he was an extraordinary person. He spoke always extemporaneously. He didn't write, he wrote almost nothing. But by coincidence, the way the universe works, one of the people who started attending his talks was a stenographer, and he started taking notes. So everything we have 9 volumes of Vivekananda's lectures. It's only most of them is because the stenographer happened to be in the audience.
Well, what are
And then
his workings in, like when you were studying it, was that in a language that you understood? Because I know some philosophers, you got to translate it before you can even understand what you're listening to. Or
I
was
I
that
know I know exactly what you mean, and it's not whether it's in English or some other language. They may be talking in English, and it still doesn't make any
right?
sense. Well, the interesting thing about Vivekananda is it's firstly it's almost everything he did is in English.
Yeah.
But secondly, he said his goal was to take the highest ideas and express them in such a way that a baby can understand them.
Oh,
So if you sat down with his books, you'll find it looks like everything is makes sense, total sense, and you feel you're understanding it. But and at first it's possible to be it's so deceptively simple, you don't see the depth of it. But as you go on studying it, you realize, wow, it's just layered and layered and layered. There is real depth there. And I've spent, like, when I first came across this many decades ago, and I'm still studying it, and I'm still finding new things in there. By the way, one of the things he's famous for saying is, you know but little of that which is within you.
oh, I
You
like that.
know but little of that which is within you. So don't tell me ever that you've reached, you figured everything out, and that this is just you and you can't do anything more. No, there's more in you yet to be discovered.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. So you've written this book. If everybody read your book and attempted to put that into practice, in your mind, have you thought about where that could lead us? Where does that
Well,
lead us? Does that because to me, at some point, you're kind of you're wrapping in evolution into that. Are we
exactly.
going to
Yes,
evolve
yes.
to
Mm.
something, better or different?
I think definitely better. In fact, it's interesting that you brought up evolution, because they in near the beginning of the book, I did start talking about modern theories of evolution,
Yeah.
from Darwin. Darwin analyzed very, very carefully the plant world and the animal world, and he observed. He gave evidence to say that species change, and then he tried to figure out the driving factors. What initiates that change, or what pushes that change. And he gave us things like survival of the fittest, as possible explanations. But he was very, very careful to say that that probably doesn't work at the human level, that there
Right.
are other things going on. And then since then, evolutionary biologists have taken that up and come up with many, many different ideas of what is evolution at the human level. It's not like I've got 5 fingers. It's not like evolution is I'm going to get a sixth finger. That we would say is strange. So physically, we have evolved more or less where we will be. So
Right.
what does evolution mean at the human level? And the conclusion of thinkers like Julian Huxley, who is the grandson of Thomas Huxley. Thomas Huxley was an English philosopher and one of the first people who realized the depth of what Darwin had discovered. So he was one of the first champions of Darwin's theory of evolution. Anyway, his grandson, Julian Huxley, was at this conference sometime in the 50s, I think, when they were trying to discuss what is evolution at the human level. What he says is evolution at the human level is mainly psychosocial. So it's not physical at all. It's evolution of the mind and evolution of the way we interact with each
Right.
other. Because you see, for us to be human, we have to include things like being compassionate. We have to include things like helping each other, working together, cooperating with each other. And so if we took a purely Darwinian explanation, it doesn't explain all the things that we hold so dear at the human level.
Right.
So he's saying that it's our mind that's evolving and the way we interact with others. And actually, I think he was the one who coined the phrase, the science of human possibilities. He said that's what we need. Going forward, we need a science of human possibilities. I heard about this actually, an interesting path. I heard about this from a person who I think, in my opinion, was actually living the science of human possibilities.
Yeah.
He was a monk. He was a monk. His name was Ranganathananda. And he belonged to the monastic order that Vivekananda started, the person, the 19th century philosopher that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
He started a monastic order, and Ranganathananda became a monk in that order. But by that time, Vivekananda had passed away. Now, what's unusual about Ranganathananda is he had no formal education, almost none. And yet, there he was on the same stage as John Kenneth Galbraith, Harvard economist, evolutionary biologist Julian Huxley, and others, and speaking with beautiful English, perfect diction, and talking about really deep ideas about human perfection, from the point of view of Indian philosophy.
Yeah.
And you can just marvel at this. I met him a few times, and I can just marvel at what more evidence do you want that there's infinite potential within us? A person who had no formal education just taught himself enough English to be able to read Vivekananda, realized that this must be real, and then dedicated his whole life to shaping himself, into the being that Vivekananda had said is possible. So much so that he could stand on, almost as equals with leading intellectuals. I just thought that is the science of human possibilities. And so the place where I came across this first was in a book that of his lectures, of Ranganathananda's lectures, where he described this conference where Julian Huxley had coined the phrase, the science of human, and that stayed with me. That was in 1978, I think, quite a long time ago that I came across that. So.
Yeah. It's I was a kid in the 70s, and in a lot of ways it seems like that was just yesterday. And then you look and it's like 50 years ago.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
See, we don't have any time to waste. We got to untap this potential now.
Exactly. Here's an interesting thing about time. There is no aristocracy of time.
Yeah.
The richest person in the world and the poorest person in the world all have 24 hours in a day. And there's no bank account. You can't say, I didn't use this time today, so I'm going to put it in tomorrow. I'm going to have 30 hours. No, it's done. It's over.
Wouldn't that be nice if you could be like, I'm going to take a day off, but I'll make it up tomorrow.
But it means that we all have access to the same thing. So it's up to us. It's up to us how we use our time, and we can make ourselves the best version of ourselves that we can be, or we can squander away the time. It's up to us. You can see, you can hold in front of yourself examples like Ranganathan and many others, Gandhi himself. Even when we see the Olympics, all these people, how they've transformed themselves to do what is considered, unbelievable, the kind of feats they're able to do. It shows you that what's within us. Don't put a limit. You can do anything you want, whatever that is, and you cannot put a limit on how far we can go. Mahatma Gandhi said the difference between what we are and what we can be is that gap is enough to solve most of the problems of the world. Can you imagine if more people, more of us would pick up our task here and do, like, for example, what Rangananda did, and shape themselves into who they can be. We what a world, what a change we'll see in the world. I mean, then we will have we'll have the people who can deal with climate change. We'll have the people who can tell us, where the limits on AI are.
That's right.
We'll have people who will know how to bring about real peace in the world, rather than this eruptions all over the world constantly with tensions between countries. And moreover, it'll tell us there's a big problem that is coming up, in compared to which climate change is actually a small problem.
Yeah.
The problem that's coming up is an existential one. What does it mean to be human? You see, I can imagine a setting where we don't have an answer to that question, and then all that's left for us is to commit suicide. There's no reason to live. Why are we alive? What makes us special? What makes us unique? What is our role here? If we don't think more deeply about those questions, before you know it, a machine is going to come and stand in front of us and say, look, for all intents and purposes, I'm human.
Yeah.
And we have no
you're
answer.
exactly right.
We have no answer to the question. Then why get up in the morning? He says, you don't need to get
if
up.
it's
I will do
pointless,
everything
then
for
what
you.
are we doing?
Exactly. Can you imagine if we think the mental health is an issue now, what it might be if we don't solve this problem?
Yeah.
It's going to be even worse. So I would say that the number one problem that's staring us from the future is we need to figure out who we are. What does it mean to be human? That answer has to come to us. This is not a intellectual luxury that we're talking about. It's going to be an existential necessity.
Yeah.
As a world,
it's a little scary when you think of it that way, but you're exactly right. I've never really thought of that. But yeah, that's really what we've all been trying to figure out. We just maybe haven't been very efficient at it.
Right.
Well, and I like the whole concept of improving yourself improves others. It's kind of that the saying, a rising tide rises all ships. That
exactly.
It's kind of
yes.
if I improve myself, then who knows how that's going to affect someone else, no matter what it is. If my love is podcasting, well, who's to say that I'm not going to inspire somebody else to get into podcasting, and maybe they're podcasting about something completely different that helps somebody else, and it just kind of who knows where that leads. And that's just podcasting. That's in my mind. I'm thinking, well, there's a lot more important jobs, but maybe not. It depends on the perspective.
That's a really good point that you just made. By the way, I was just remembering that last night I was watching the first night of the Democratic Convention.
Me too.
And I heard a speech. I think it was Hillary Clinton, perhaps, who was saying that when she was young, I might be getting the people wrong, but when people are young, they see somebody aspiring to do something or trying to do or doing something, and it might be decades later, but that image is still in their head, and they remember that, and that's a role model for them. So remember this: doing something really well will inspire many people. Sometimes we think serving the world means I got to go out and help the homeless, and I have to do social service. Actually, there are many ways to help the world, many ways to serve people.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the book is The Science of Human Possibilities. Is it available now, or is it coming out?
I believe it's available now. It should be on Amazon and other sellers. I think it's also available from the publisher himself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Is
I
your
hope you read it.
intention
And
are you going to write more volumes about this subject, or are you moving to something a little different?
well, both. Firstly, I think the best way to I do a lot of writing for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, what I do publicly is just the tip of the iceberg. So I write about whatever moves me. So, for example, we've just for the last 1 hour we've been talking about this. Now I'm all fired up about these things. Probably as soon as we're done, I'm going to take up my journal and start writing for an
I
hour
love
or
that.
so. But in terms of what else I want to do, I really do want to talk about the end of poverty, the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm trying to see how to take these ideas forward, not only in the way we've presented them in this book, but even to go beyond that and say how we together can address really fundamental problems of the world with these kind of attitudes, an attitude of thankfulness and appreciation, the attitude that having a good sense of my own identity, the attitude of reflecting and studying and keeping a journal,
Yeah.
and understanding I'm always moving forward. With all of this, what can we actually do in terms of the really big problems facing the world?
Yeah, I love that. And sir, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time with us. I'd spend all evening talking this. It's so interesting to me, and it's doing the same thing to me. I'm getting all fired up, and I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, how can I use this to help? Which is the whole point of the book, is we all need to start questioning a little bit, and doing a little soul searching, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sir, I hope you'll come back so that we
Oh.
can kind of explore this further, or maybe on the next book we can explore that. But please do. This has been.
I would love to. I would love to. It's been such a treat chatting with you, and I can see that you're on the same wavelength, and we
Yeah,
are resonating really well. So I'd love to come back and chat
yeah.
further.
I'm gonna get my copy because
Good.
it's the possibilities of it. I know I'm just starting to scratch the surface, but I'm seeing it a little bit just from our conversation, and that's exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's terrific. So, um, before I let you go, sir, are you on social media? Do you have a website? Where can we find out more about you?
I'm not on social media, in fact.
No
I
website
bet.
yet?
No, I mean, I guess you can look at me. You can find me through the Department of Mathematics at the
Yeah.
University of Toronto. I do have a web page there. Also, if your listeners find this intriguing and want to talk further, they can reach me through you.
Yeah, that absolutely. They absolutely can. Do you have any plans to do some like public speaking about the book?
So far, no plans, but I would love to do that. In fact, I think the thing I enjoy most, even more than writing, is engaging with people in person.
Yeah.
Because the reason is that you can have a really nice two-way traffic there. That's why I like teaching so much. That's why I like being in front of students, because I encourage everybody to ask as many questions as they want, because then we feed off each other, we stimulate each other. So absolutely, I'd be happy to, if the opportunity presents itself, to speak about these ideas.
Yeah, I hope you get the chance, because I think it would be really beneficial to a lot of people. My dad is an educator. He's retired now,
Yeah.
but he used to say the same thing. The part that he misses about teaching is the interaction. It's not necessarily teaching anything in particular. It's just that interaction and having those discussions and getting to see the light bulbs go off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Before we close, maybe I'll tell you one story.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago, but I remember it. A long time ago, I was a graduate student, and um, so I was at Harvard. And at Harvard, the graduate students in those days actually taught courses.
Yeah.
You weren't just a TA; you could actually do the lecturing. So I was teaching a course on linear algebra, and I stated a theorem and then explained the proof. It was not so hard, but pretty simple. There was a student sitting in the front row. he got up like this and raised his hands and said, "That is so beautiful." He just he felt the
Love that.
beauty so much that he couldn't sit down. He had to rise and say that in front of the whole class. And you're talking about, seeing the light bulbs go off. That is the magical moment when you're in front of class. That's what you're looking for. I found this again. So as I said, this is many years ago, but I found it again recently in a movie. I don't know how many people noticed this, and I wish your viewers your viewers actually go back and watch this if they haven't noticed it. It's Kung Fu Panda.
Of
Now,
all the movies, I thought you were going to say that is not the one.
Kung Fu Panda. I don't. Whoever wrote that, they must be very deep. They understood something here.
Yeah.
So the scene in Kung Fu Panda, I forget which one. I think it is number one, the first one.
Yeah.
They are the Shifu, I think, is a teacher. He takes Po, the panda, out to a mountain to teach him, and he says, "I have to use a different technique with you." Right at the very end, when Po has figured it out, and he does this leap, the camera, this is animation, of course, but the camera goes to Shifu, and the smile on Shifu's face, you have to see that. That is what the teacher is looking for. That's the
Love
moment
that.
the teacher realizes the light bulb has turned on in the student. That feeling of joy. If you have the Kung Fu Panda CD or DVD rather, you should play it and look for that one scene where Shifu suddenly realizes he has learned it.
I
Whatever
love
it is I've been trying to communicate, he's got it.
Well,
That's
I've seen
beautiful.
that movie several times. I'm a grandparent, so I've seen it several times, but I didn't catch that. So yeah, next time I watch it, and I know I'll
it's
be
it's
watching.
not it's not for children. I make all my PhD students watch it, and then
Yeah.
we sit around and discuss it.
Oh, I like that. If I was in college or working on a PhD, I would love the day that we're watching Kung Fu Panda. This. I know we got to wrap up, but it dawned on me. We spend so much time in book clubs. What a great book this would be in a book club, because you could, if everybody's reading, and then just have that discussion, even though you're all on kind of that same discovery journey at that same beginning level. That's to me, that's the type of book we need to be doing book clubs with.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, sir, thank you so much. Let's
Thank
definitely
you.
plan to do this again in the future. This is it's been fun, enlightening. Really enjoyed meeting you.
Thanks, Michael. I enjoyed it too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's been good. It's been good. Okay, hold on one second. Absolutely loved that conversation. Dr. Kumar Murty, he's a professor at the University of Toronto. Very deep and intelligent guy, but the part about him that I love the most is you can tell he's a teacher, and where I was talking about having difficulties explaining mathematics to my daughter because I couldn't change my teaching style. You can tell that he can, and that he loves finding that playing field that he can interact one-on-one with a student and kind of get through to them. And that story I was telling about my daughter, that what that taught me, before I started podcasting, I was a call center director. It taught me how to coach people. As bad as I was with her, and to her credit, she hung in there with me. I took that as a learning experience and learned, taught myself how to adjust my coaching style so that I could help people, because people learn in different ways. Just because I teach it a certain way, that may not be the way you absorb it. So I have to adjust. It's my opinion, it's the teacher's responsibility to kind of make those adjustments, the student's responsibility to absorb it, but it's the teacher's responsibility to find the level that the student can understand. Kumar obviously does that, and I love that. I grew up around educators. My grandmother was a librarian. I told you Brett's a children's librarian. My father was a school teacher and then a school administrator, and always, the entire time I was growing up, just talked about his love of teaching, and it didn't really matter what the subject was. He just really enjoyed helping people to learn something, and that always kind of stuck with me. The book is The Science of Human Possibilities, and it made me, honestly, it made me think of my mother. My mother, she went to college for one day. She went one day, was absolutely not for her. She called my dad, came home, they got married, because she was like, college not for me. The part about my mother that I've always loved is she has never, she's in her 70s now. She has never stopped teaching herself and learning about stuff. And she bounces around. Anything that sparks her interest, I mean, she dives into it. She researches it. She teaches herself how to do it, whatever it is. One of the smarter people that I know is and the most talented, for that matter, is my mother, and it's mostly self-taught, which is what he was talking about, is that working on yourself. That's what she's done her whole life, and I've always admired that about her. And she's done it mostly for her own benefit. She's done it because it's something that's fascinated her, or something that sparked her interest, so she learned more about it. But just like we were talking about, she may have done that for herself and never really intended to help anybody else with it. But I guarantee that it passed on to me and my brother, her, our kids, her grandkids. We've all picked up on that and watched her speak passionately about a subject that you would never expect her to know. I don't know, taught us a lot. Really fascinated with the book. So Science of Human Possibilities. Check that out. I've got my copy ordered. I know me and Emily plan to read it and have those. Nothing better than a philosophical discussion with somebody that's close to your level. It's great when you're talking with somebody that knows a lot more than you, because you learn a lot. But when you talk with somebody that's about your level, it's so exciting, and you can bounce ideas off each other and kind of come to those epiphanies together. Just terrific. Hope you enjoyed that. Didn't mean to kind of get on my soapbox there, but I guess I did. If you're finding us for the first time, we have done this. Today we put out episode 827. We've been doing it for about 5.5 years. That's a lot of episodes. And we do that because we love it. But we also have the best guest list out there. It doesn't matter if it's a podcast or a talk show, whatever it is. I would put our guests up against anybody's. I'm so proud of the guests that we have had. And it's not all from the entertainment world. I mean, that we've had a lot of intellectuals, a lot of professors, a lot of authors on the show. So happy that Dr. Kumar came on. Definitely worth the time. So hope you enjoyed that. Our website is meistercon.com. You can find all of those episodes, audio and video versions. So please check us out there. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. If you go there, please subscribe. It's free. Really does help us out. Appreciate you guys so much. Till next time. Bye, everybody.